So, Ruth is a story that we don't encounter very often, but we do read about Ruth in the New Testament. As the last part of the video told us, Ruth is in the family tree of none other than Jesus himself. All right? So we're just going to look at a few pieces of Ruth and why that's important for us today. The basic story of Ruth is that R word that we like to talk about in confirmation. Relationships, okay? Relationships. Naomi, to make this as least complicated as possible, right? You're paying attention?
No.
Oh, I got it.
You got it?
Don't open it. It smells horrible. It gives me terrible.
Open it.
Oh man.
Alright, so Naomi and her family leave Bethlehem during a time of famine. Alright, so it gets really dry, no crops, no harvest. It's a bad time for people. They go to a place called Moab. If we remember parts of the story that we've read previously, Moab is not viewed very positively by the people of Israel. But they've got no other choice than to go somewhere else. This mirrors Jacob going to Israel or going to Egypt in a time of famine. Whenever something bad happens, people of God's story have to go find means somewhere else. So Naomi leaves, goes to Moab. Her sons marry Moabite women, which is against the law. People from Israel weren't supposed to marry outside of their own group of people. So all of a sudden we have a problem. It's okay as long as they stay in Moab, but as soon as they go back to Bethlehem, it's going to be a problem. Well, lo and behold, they have to go back to Bethlehem. This becomes a problem for Ruth because she is an outsider. All right? That's a problem. Like she is a Moabite lady living. Bless you.
You scared me.
Wakey. It's a baby.
She is a foreign lady living in Bethlehem. Okay? Through a series of complicated marriage laws that we will not read at this time, she cannot be married. But it turns out Boaz is related to Naomi. And so Naomi orchestrates an event of their meeting, and so they are able to get married. That's the story in a nutshell. What we learn from Ruth, she promises to do what?
Become his wife. Her wife.
No.
Take care of.
Go where Naomi goes and die where she dies.
Okay, so we're going to go.
And Naomi's God be her God.
Okay, so she's going to go where Naomi goes. Most importantly, Naomi's God is going to be her God, which is a really big promise to make. Okay, this is all getting back to relationships. All right, so let us turn to that very promise. Ruth chapter 1, 16 to 17. Ruth chapter 1, 16 to 17.
Oh, I tried to turn page.
444.
It's actually page 445.
It's 444.
Oh, no. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Why don't we start in the back?
444.
Okay.
Ruth, what?
Ruth chapter 1, verse 16.
16 through 17?
Yep. Karis, do you have that for us? We're going to go to the back. You got it?
I'm putting the
You're going to have to
Bible
project
reading
loud so we can hear it up here. Everybody listen. 16 and 17.
Shut up.
I wish I do not press me to leave you, or to turn back from following you. Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. Where you die, I will die. There will I be buried. My Lord, your death, and so to me, and more as well. I even death parts me from you. When Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her.
All right. Thank you. So here's that promise that we get in the video. This is a really big deal, all right? I'm going to go where you're going to go, lodge where you lodge, your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Remember, she comes from a different culture and from a different people group. She's promising to change her ways to follow and be with Naomi. That's a really positive relationship, all right? She's wanting to stick with her, even though it's going to be hard. It's demonstrating a good relationship for us. All right, so we're going to go to the meeting. Chapter 2 is where Ruth meets Boaz. So Megan, if you would, that's just a little bit down the page. If you'll pick up chapter 2, verse 1, and then we'll work our way around. We're going to read through verse 7.
Now Naomi had a kinsman and her husband's side, a prominent rich man of the family of Elimelech,
That's good enough.
whose name was Boaz.
And Ruth and Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and glean on the ears of grain behind someone in whose sight I may find favor." She said to her, "Go, my daughter."
So she went, she came and gleaned in the field behind the reaper. As it happened, she came to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who has the family of Boaz.
Just then Boaz came from Bethlehem. He said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." They answered, "The Lord bless you."
Then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, to whom this young woman belonged.
The servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the Moabite who came back with Nahum from the country of Moab."
She said, "Please let me
Glean.
glean and
Mhm.
gather among the sheaves behind the reapers." So she came, and she has been on her feet from early this morning until now, without resting even for a moment.
All right, so here's the story.
Seriously.
And this gets into, we've had that word glean a couple of times. We'll come back to you. Does anybody know what the word glean means? What does glean mean?
Maybe closely looked at.
Can you
Right.
tell us what it means?
It's like bright.
Green.
It's got something to do with grain. For harvesting grain, what does glean potentially mean?
Protein.
Pick up the extras.
Shelby,
Taking notes.
if you want to read,
Fertilizer.
just to the left of chapter 2, it says 2.2 glean. You see that definition in the left-hand margin?
Yeah.
Other page.
Green. I have
Yep.
a dictionary out.
Oh, I got it.
I say that says green.
Shelby's going to read it for us.
Gleaning refers to collecting leftover grain in the field in a
Ancient.
ancient Israel. It was a way of providing for the poor.
All right. So, gleaning to us seems like kind of a silly agricultural practice. Literally what it meant, if I'm Travis the farmer,
Travis the farmer.
this is my farm, I've got rows, blah, blah, blah. Travis's farm. All right, I'm going to tell my folk to go harvest all of this, but like a good farmer, I've planted all the way to the edges of my field, all right? If I'm following the law in Israel, I'm not going to harvest these edges so that the poor or the orphan or the widow, we're going to read about that in just a second, can come and harvest here. That way they've got something to eat. All right, think about who are the most vulnerable in a society. Who doesn't have access? All right, poor people are very vulnerable.
Orphans.
Orphans are vulnerable. They don't have anybody to take care of them.
Orphaned widows.
Okay.
Poor orphan widows.
The trio right there, all
Yes.
three. That's
Oh
tough.
my God.
So those three groups of people, the poor,
That's poor folks.
the orphans, and the widows, don't have anybody to provide for them. So they can come and glean leftover grain, or if I've got a vineyard, if I'm a vineyard owner, the leftover grapes. Okay? That's written into the law.
Oh, wow.
All right?
What's another name for harvesting that was in the story that we just
Reaping.
read?
Gleaning.
Reaping. Reaping. So you know how the Grim Reaper, like you picture,
Yeah, that little thing.
Yeah.
That's
That's potentially where that comes from because they use a big farming tool to harvest.
That's what they used to do.
All right, so here we're going to go back to Leviticus. I'm not going to have a split back and forth. But I want you to listen to this is from Leviticus. This is one of the laws that God gives to the people so they can live in relationship with one another. Leviticus 19, verse 9. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall not strip your vineyard bare, or gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Lord your God. So God is telling the people, look, there are those in need in the community. There are those who are going to be passing through. The actual word for stranger is alien, not extraterrestrial, but someone who is alien to the land. Okay?
Alien in
An
the
immigrant.
dictionary is foreign.
Everybody listen. What Zach's going to give us the definition here.
In
Alien.
the definition for alien is a foreign visitor.
Foreign visitor. Okay, that's a good definition. All right. So for the orphan, the alien, you go to Deuteronomy. We get this again. Deuteronomy 24, starting in verse 19. When you reap your harvest in your field and forget a sheaf in the field, you shall not go back to get it. It shall be left for the alien, the orphan, and the widow, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all your undertakings. When you beat down your olive trees, do not strip what is left. It shall be for the alien, the orphan, and the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not glean what is left. It shall be for the alien, the orphan, and the widow. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, I am commanding you to do this. So in the law is written a lot of grace for those in need. All right, we would call this grace as a new people of the New Testament. This is where God is giving pure gift to somebody. Left on the edges, what may seem like a silly practice to us is a life-giving harvest for those in need. Yes.
What was that reading?
That was Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 19 through 22. Okay, so remember, Ruth is who? Where does she come from? Moab, right?
Yeah.
She's from Moab. So she is a foreigner in the land of Israel in Bethlehem. So she goes out into the field to participate in this practice of gathering the gleanings. And that's where she meets Boaz. Okay? So this is a story that works in some of the pieces of the law and demonstrates how relationships are supposed to work in God's eyes. Because how does Boaz respond?
He
All
likes
right?
her. Yeah, he likes her.
Go harvest, right?
Yep, he likes her.
In chapter 2, we're going to get to that. Verse 10. Cora, can you find verse 10 for me in chapter 2? We're going to pick up with you.
I'm not texting, I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes.
Y'all two be ready as well. Briar and River, y'all are going to get
What page?
Oh my
445. It's the very next page. Verse 10, 11, 12, and 13.
Can I go? No. I'll take that as a yes.
Go for it.
Then she fell prostrate with her face to the ground, and she said to him, "Why have I found favor in your sight, that you should take notice of me, when I am a foreigner?"
But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told me, and how you left your father and mother in your native land and came to people that you did not know before.
May the Lord.
May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for
Refuge. All right, let's stop there. That's actually right where I want to stop. Okay, so Boaz recognizes that she's not from that area, but he responds very positively. He gives her support, and then he says a blessing to her, that last line, "May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge." So it's a positive response. That's a good lesson for us now, how we are to respond to people who may be different from us. All right? We live in a very, very diverse world. We don't all look the same. And written right here in a very old story is a good lesson for how we are to respond to those who may be different. Sometimes people can look very similar to us and still be very different. All right? So this is good relationship practices between Ruth and Boaz. All right, we're going to skip ahead to the end of the book, short book, chapter 4. Chapter 4.
Not very much of Ruth.
It's a pretty short book. You could read it in about half an hour.
Chapter 4, what verse?
13.
I'm there.
So this is after we're going to pick up.
Why am I in Samuel?
Jairus is going to start. We're going to come back to the front to Dane.
13 through what?
18.
You
Everybody?
gotta put the Bible in.
Good. Good. All right. Is everybody there?
Do I start?
All right, Jairus, pick up for us in verse 13. It's at the bottom of the page.
So loud, please. David. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When they came together, the Lord made her conceive, and she bore a son.
Then the woman said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, who has left you this day without next of kin, and made his name be renowned in Israel.
He shall be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has borne him.
Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her
Bosom.
bosom, and became his nurse.
The woman of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, "A son has been born to Naomi." They named him Obed. He became the father of Jesus, the father of
Jesse.
David. Oh, Jesse.
Yep.
The father of David.
All right. We won't read all of those names, okay? So this, Naomi is blessed. All right. Bless the Lord who has not left you this day. Look at the language there that's used to describe God. There in verse 15. God shall be to you a restorer of life. What a powerful name to call God, the restorer of life. Not someone who deals out death and judgment and punishment, but the restorer of life. Okay, this is a very clear image, an image that we're going to see in Jesus. Right? Jesus is the one who's the ultimate restorer of life. He comes to give life to all the whole world. When we read the Gospel of Matthew, we come across Ruth's name again. All right? Matthew chapter 1. We're not going to get there. But we have the genealogy of Jesus. Basically the family tree, tracing it all the way back, okay? What's interesting about the genealogy of Jesus is that in old times, normally the name or the family legacy can only be passed down through the male line. So if I have kids, my name and my legacy goes to my kids. Only if I have a son. If I have a daughter, my legacy doesn't get passed on. Okay?
That's called a patriarchal society.
Wait, question.
Women have rights now.
Yeah, can't a girl though get like it happened a long time ago?
At least you're close to there.
Like if it's like a guy, I
can't hear Lauren. I can't hear Lauren.
So like if she was a guy and I married him, and her last name is
Guys,
Pitts. So I could say that his name is Kennedy. Last name.
This is a very different society than what we live in now. So it's only passed down through the male line. What's interesting in Matthew is that we have Ruth as one of the ancestors of Jesus. Not Boaz, but Ruth. It comes through the line of Ruth. Very interesting for Matthew, who's born in this patriarchal society, to write something like that into his story of Jesus.
But is this because that Ruth is more holy?
What's that?
Is this because Ruth is more holy?
Ruth demonstrated what it's like to be in a good relationship. Remember her promise to Naomi? That's what we're supposed to get from the story, I think, is how are we in relationship with one another? Those kind of promises that Ruth said, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to support you. Because remember, Naomi, husband, had died, so she falls into that category of widow. She's got no one to provide for her. So Ruth goes out into the field and harvests the gleanings and brings them home so that Naomi has food. And then when she marries Boaz, Boaz will take care of all of them because we're still in that patriarchal mode. That's not how it works anymore. Okay? So, what we take from Ruth, one of the ancestors of our faith, is good relationships. All right? Short book, great story, but that's where we're going to leave Ruth for the evening. We're going to go to another person of faith, Daniel. The book of Daniel.
Are we talking about Daniel now?
Yep. So, everybody find the book of Daniel.
You just said it died.
Guys,
Daniel.
What page is Daniel on?
1421. All right. Everybody got Daniel?
Yep.
Where are we gonna read that?
Daniel.
Background file? What are we gonna read?
We're going to start with the background file. 1421. All right. Can I get a volunteer from the back row?
You're not in the back row.
Who did me?
All right. Megan, project and read for us the background file, and I will help you with the funky names.
Oh, all of it?
All of the background file, yep.
Oh, never mind. All of it?
Megan can do it. Megan can do it.
Tradition, Daniel appears in the prophets section of the Bible, following Ezekiel, another book that contains symbolic visions. In Jewish tradition, Daniel follows Esther, which also narrates the experiences of exiles, people displaced from Judah and Jerusalem. The book of Daniel focuses on Daniel, Shadrach,
Meshach.
and Abednego.
There you go.
That on other exiled people of God. The book was written in 2 languages. Well, verse 1.
I'll explain that.
Okay. Were written in Hebrews.
Okay.
Were composed in
Aramaic.
This division does not match the common division of the book between chapters 1 through 6 and 7 through 12.
Thank you. All right. Daniel is a really neat book because it's the only book in the Old Testament that's bilingual. All right. It was written in 2 languages. It was written in Hebrew, which was the language of the people of Israel, and it was written in Aramaic, which was the language of the Persian Empire. And actually, it's still that way. If you go back to the original text,
I spell Aramaic.
Aramaic. Aramaic. Okay? So, Daniel is a very interesting book. We put it in the section of prophets because we see Daniel as a prophet. Okay? Daniel is sometimes classified in another way. Has anybody ever heard the term apocalypse?
Oh, yes, I
Before.
have. It's when something takes over something else.
It's like a plague.
It's like a lot of things.
It's like The Walking Dead.
Like December 21st.
Okay, so we, because of our pop culture, which is often uneducated,
Oh, they're quiet children.
apocalyptic, we often associate this word with what, really? Zombie, death, right? We associate this with death.
The end.
The end, right? We associate apocalypse with the end of the world. Okay, Eli, yes.
Doesn't it actually mean like some major change, like the end of what you think is what?
That's a revolution.
Ah, so it could mean a change. The
Is that the Y between
actual,
the L and the...
this
Yes.
is a Y. So the actual meaning of apocalypse, so the apocalyptic we associate with the end of the world. It comes from this word, spell that right. Apocalypse literally means
Literally.
literally
Literally.
Like it's in the dictionary?
revelation. All right, to be revealed. Apocalypse means revelation. What's the last book of the Bible?
Revelation.
Revelation.
Wait, what does revelation mean?
Revelation, to be revealed. To reveal something. To make something known. Okay? So apocalypse simply means revelation. Alright? It's not about the end of the world. It's not about zombies. It's not about some kind of crazy meteor coming and destroying anything. Alright?
You sure? Revelation.
I am positive.
Are you positive that you're positive?
I am positive that I'm positive.
Well, you used to say
Only fools
only
are
Dane would
positive.
get.
Oh, I am positive.
Why did it come
Well,
up that
no, who's
apocalypse
to
is
say?
bad?
All right. So we are
I
taught
told y'all that story yet?
we are taught that apocalypse is a bad thing.
Yeah.
Okay? In Bible language or Bible times, this literature actually is very hopeful. Apocalypse is something from which we get hope. Apocalyptic books like Daniel or Revelation are meant to give people hope. And so we think about the book of Daniel. Daniel's written, actually we think it's written between 167 and 164. We can date it pretty accurately. BCE, before Jesus. 167 before Jesus. It's one of the books we can date most accurately. Yes.
Someone said that BC stood for something else, like
Before Christ.
Someone said it wasn't before Christ. It was also before
So there, when we're talking about dates, there's the old BC and AD, before Christ and after death. Loose translation.
And then there's like a BCE.
It's after Dominion.
After Dominion, so that was another way. Scholars have now, it's BCE, before Common Era, or CE, Common Era. So they shifted just a little bit in how we describe these things. So Daniel, being an apocalyptic book, is meant to give hope. Okay? So, Daniel is written to give the people hope. This is probably more information than you want to know.
Why'd you erase that? Did we not need to know that?
Because I'm going to write some other
Because
things.
we already know.
Okay. You already know too much. All right, so, Daniel, these are the years that we think Daniel's written. This is a lot of information. You may need this on a quiz show one day, so bear with me.
That's 3 years.
All right?
Oh my god.
I missed something. Does that say Babylon?
Yep. Okay. We're getting to the video of Daniel, but I want to give you the background. Okay? Because Daniel is a book that is written during one period of time that reflects on a different period of time. So it's written during this time, but reflects on the exile into Babylon, which took place in 598 and 586. There were two different exiles, okay? So Daniel is written here, but it uses names and stories from this time. All right? The video doesn't specify this. The video makes it as if Daniel lived during the time of the Babylonian exile. We know from scholarship that that's not the case. And so just to give you that clarity, because I think it's important. Otherwise, we start building false narratives in Scripture.
So it's like guessing the future? Kind of.
It's not guessing the future.
It's knowing.
It's reflecting back on the past. See, what's happening during this time period is another exile. All right? I'm not going to write the name of the people because it's hard to spell. Seleucid. It's another empire. Okay? So, the king, another fun Old Testament name that needs to come back, is Antiochus IV. Okay? So this is actually who's king at the time when Daniel is written. Okay, so we know this pretty clearly. All right? So written during this time, reflecting on this time.
So this time is actually older,
This time is
or
older.
like, yes. So this comes before, like, these numbers are smaller.
Those
and
are
it comes
very,
after.
they're like
Some of them
negative
will
numbers.
became
Yeah.
before the exile
Just-
of.
They're like
Yeah.
negative numbers. The farther, the greater the number, the smaller.
Is it already dark outside?
It's like negative.
All right, that's a timeline. So we go backwards to year 0, forwards. Okay.
640.
All right.
He's
So-
just touching me. No, no.
I can give it to you later. I'm sorry.
I didn't know.
All right. So that's the situation going on in Daniel. All right. It gives you this background information in the introduction to the book. Daniel's got all kinds of stuff going on in it. It's got stories like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego getting thrown into the fiery furnace. You may have heard that story at Bible school or in Sunday school. It's got another famous story from the Old Testament, Daniel in the what? Lion's den, right? All right. So, the purpose of these stories is to give people hope. People who are living under the dominion or under the power of other people, all right? Well, something to give them hope. The second half of Daniel, chapters 8 through 12, are kind of these crazy visions that are really hard to understand sometimes, that seem otherworldly, that seem very, very crazy. Just wildly crazy. So we're going to watch the video on Daniel.